In this video, I'll be showing you how to make the new Peapod bracelet using the Rainbow Loom. And it will be made with the pins set in a staggered position so they are not in line with one another. And you want to start with the arrows facing away from you so that the opened ends are facing away from you. And you will need 92 bands for the bracelet and then some additional bands for the extension because it's not going to be long enough to go around your wrist. And you need to choose your colors. So I've chosen 4 different colors. You can choose as many or as few as you would like. I've decided to intermix the colors throughout the bracelet so it's going to give it more of a tie-dyed look. And I'm going to be starting with the pink. And for all of the bands that I'm placing on this first layer, it's going to be 2 rubber bands at once. And the first band is going to go from the center pin and diagonally to the right. So it's going to be these 2 bands. And then you want to push them down. And then I'm going to take 2 more pink bands and I will go in the center row here. I'm just going to go to the pin above. And now I'm going to take another set of pink bands and I'll stay in this center row. And I'm just going to place them to the next pin above. And now I'm going to go to the row on the right. And I'm going to place 2 more pink bands. And then once again I'm going to go up to the next pin with pink. So now I'm going to switch to purple. And I'll stay in this right hand row. Again, I'm always using 2 bands at once, and I'm just going to go up to the next 2 pins. And now I'm going to stick with purple, and again I'm going to do it in the center row, going up the length of 2 pins. And now I will switch to the blue. And I'm just going to keep continuing on up in both of these rows using 2 bands at once, and I'm going up the length of 2 pins. And now repeating that in the center. And now I'm going to switch back to the pink. Again, I'll go up the length of 2 pins in both of these rows. And now I'll switch to the purple. And again, I'm going up the length of 2 pins in both rows. And now finally, I'm going to switch to blue. And this will take me all the way to the end of the loom. And now I want to place a set of blue bands from that center pin out to the right. And you want to make sure all of these are pushed down to the bottom of the pins because we are going to have to add more on top. So now you're going back to the start with the arrows still facing away from you. And now I want to put bands on that I am going to triple. 1 single band on every pin that will be tripled. So I'll start with purple. I'm going to go on this center pin on the end. Now in order to triple this band, I'm going to place it on my hook, twist, put it back on, twist, and put it back on. So you'll see 3 rubber bands on the hook, and I'm just going to place it right on the top here. And now I'm going to take another purple and do the same thing, get it on my hook, and then twist, put it back on, twist, and put it back on. And I'm just going to place that on the very top of the end pin on the right. And now I'm going to switch to the white bands. So for the next 2 pins, I'm going to do white. So again, I'm tripling all of these bands, placing them right on the top. Some people like to use their fingers to triple the bands, and if you prefer that method, you certainly can do that. And now I'll do blue for the next 2 pins. And now I'm going to go back to white. And now finally I'll do pink. And now I will switch back to white. I'm just going to be doing the white in between every time. And so I'm just going to continue working my way up. Now the next one I'll switch back to purple, then white, blue, then white, pink, and white. Repeating this pattern that I just placed on. So I'm going to fast forward here. And then on the very end pin on the right hand side, I'm going to place a cap band. So this band is just going to be doubled, and I want it to be the same color as my band, so I'm going to do blue. So I'm just putting it on my hook, twisting and putting it back on, so it's just doubled, and I'm going to place it on the end. And then I'm actually not going to do one on this one at all. And so now I want to go back to the start with the arrows still facing away from me. And I want to push all of these down and make sure that I have room, because I'm going to need to add another band on top yet. And so I'm going to again alternate these colors for this last band. It's going to be going from the pin on the left over to the pin on the right, diagonally and up. I'm not doing any on the very end, so I'm going to start on the second pin in the middle row. So I'm going to start with a pink band, and I'm going to double it. So I'll place it on my hook, twist, and put it back on. So there's 2 rubber bands. And I'm going from this left-hand pin diagonally up to the right. And now I'm going to switch to white. I'm just going to work my way up. So I'm doubling the band and placing it from that center pin diagonally up and to the right. And now I will switch to purple. And then back to white. I'm going to be doing white in between all of the colors again. And now I will do blue. And now white. So I'm just going to continue on till I get to the top of the loom doing that same pattern. And I'm not going to place one on the very end because we already have a band that goes in that same direction. So this was my last one I placed on. Now I'm going to turn the loom around so the arrows are now facing towards me, and it's time to loop the rubber bands. So I'm going to be starting on the left hand side. Now the very top band is this cap band that we placed on, so it's going to be 2 rubber bands. Then the next set of bands goes out to the right, and then the bottom set of bands moves forward. So I'm just going to place my hook down through the center of this pin, push back on those top 2 bands. I'm grabbing the next 2 bands, and I want to hold this cap band in place, and I'm going to move this out and to the right. And so now I'm going to go back down through. Again, pushing back on the top 2 bands, I'm grabbing the bottom 2 bands, and this is going to move straight ahead. And so now I will just work my way up the loom. I'll just stick to the left-hand row for now. So when you put your hook down through the middle, you always want to make sure that this top cap band is behind your hook. So I'm having the top 2 blue bands go behind my hook, and now I have this white band that I tripled. And then finally on the very bottom here I have the 2 blue bands, which is what I want to grab. Pull them out and then move them ahead. Just be careful as you're doing this not to pull them too tightly, because with this band that's tripled it might be a little bit tight. And if you want, you can take your hook and trace it around that pin if you feel like you need to loosen it up at all. And just be careful not to put too much pressure on your hook while doing this. And so now I'm just going to work my way up. I'm always going down through the middle. I always want the top 2 bands, that's the cap band, and then the next 3 bands to go behind my hook. And I'm only worried about grabbing the bottom 2 rubber bands, and I'm pulling them out and moving them forward. Again, I'm going to do the same thing, going down through the middle. I want the top 5 bands to go behind my hook. I'm only worried about the bottom 2, and I want them to come out and move ahead. So that's going to be the pattern that you're going to follow for the entire bracelet. You're always going down through the middle, pushing back on the top 5 bands and grabbing the bottom 2 and carefully pulling them out and moving them ahead. So I will just work my way up doing this same pattern. And again, I'm just carefully pulling these out because I don't want any of the bands to snap on me. And then once you get to the very top, you want to push back on these top rubber bands, the top 3, grab the bottom 2, and they're going to move into that center row. And now you want to go back to the start. And we're just going to loop the bands in the center row doing that same pattern. So I am going to go down through this end pin, push back on the upper bands, grab the bottom 2 and pull them out and ahead. And from now on you're going down through the middle, pushing back on the top 5 bands, grabbing those bottom 2 and pulling them out and moving them ahead. So some bands are stretchier than others, and some of them glide against each other better than others do. So depending on the type of bands you have will depend on how easy or difficult this might be for you. And we're almost to the top here, just a couple more to loop. This is the last one. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the start here, and I'm going to carefully remove this from the loom by just placing my hook down inside and releasing these bands from the pins. So I will just fast forward here. And now before I take these last rubber bands off of the pins at the top here, I want to take my hook, place it down through the center, put it all the way out to the side, make sure it's through all of the rubber bands that are on this middle pin. Take another rubber band and pull it up through. Then put the loose end back on the hook so you have the 2 bands on. This is what's going to keep all of those bands from falling apart. And now I can carefully remove this from the loom. And so here is what it looks like when it first comes off of the loom. But what I like to do is on this one side, take the bands and pull them apart so it sort of splits open in the middle. And then it has this cool pattern where you can see all of the circles on the one side. And then this is what it looks like on the other side. And so this is not going to be long enough to go around your wrist, so you're going to need to add an extension. So I'm going to just put this aside for now. I'm going to take my loom. I want the arrows to face away from me. And so I will alternate the color of bands. I will start on the bottom right here. I'm only going to be working with one row of the loom. And I'll just alternate the colors here. So I'll do purple next, and white, and then I'll do blue. And for this next rubber band, I'm going to take the two white bands that are on my hook. I'm just going to place this as the next rubber band. Just make sure both bands make it on. I'm going to stretch it out here. And now what I'm going to do is just work my way backwards. I'm going to reach inside, grab this blue band, and pull it back towards myself. And I'm just going to continue doing that. This is just going to make a single chain. All the way to the end here. And now I'm going to take my hook and put it down through the middle of these pink bands, and I can pull this off of the loom. And I'm going to take a clip. I have an S-clip here. I'm just going to hook it through these two bands. And now I want to go to the other side of the bracelet, and I'm just going to put my hook through some of these bands on the end. And again, I'm going to take a white rubber band. I'm going to pull that through and put the other end back on my hook. And then once again, I'm just going to set this aside. And now I'm going to do that same pattern again, just to make the other half of the extension. So you may not need this many bands. You'll have to see, depending on the size of your wrist, how many bands you'll need. I would say it's probably about 6 to 10 rubber bands. And now once again, I'm going to take these two white bands, and I'm just going to put them on. And now I will work my way backwards. And you don't have to use this method for the extension. You can really use any type of bracelet that you'd like. This is just the easiest to show. And now I'm putting my hook down through the end and pulling these off. And now I can take the other side of my clip and then hook these bands through that. And I have my extension on. And then here is the bracelet. So I think it has a pretty cool look to it. And I'll show you a different one that I had made. This one I used white bands and then the neon rainbow colors, and I just alternated the position of these bands. And then here's what it looks like on the other side. So there's tons of different color choices that you can pick. So that is the Peapod bracelet. I hope that everyone enjoyed this tutorial. You can always leave me comments on YouTube and Facebook, post pictures of your creations to my Facebook page, and please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can stay up to date on all of my latest tutorials. You can also find me on Pinterest and Instagram, so please feel free to subscribe to those as well. Thanks for watching!